Last time we were on the show, Jamal Jarrett, Michael Jackson, Julian Humphrey, they'd already hit the portal. So those guys, but Julian Humphrey is now committed to Texas A&M. I believe those other two are still uncommitted, if I'm not mistaken. So we hit on those three since the last time we spoke. Justin Rett, the former 4-star safety, he has hit the portal. Sam Pimba, the true freshman, 5-star edge rusher from a year ago, he has hit the portal. Jake Pope, the Alabama transfer, former Buford grad. He has also hit the portal. You know, that guy never really cracked the depth chart. None of these guys really cracked the depth chart. And the one that goes most for is the linebacker position, Troy Bowles. Like when Troy Bowles committed, it was like, okay, it's gonna be an upward battle for you to get on the field with Raylan Wilson, with CJ Allen. And then Georgia brings in Chris Cole, brings in who am I? The other one, Justin Williams, in last year's class. And I'm not even counting Smile Munden and other guys that were already in that inside linebacker room. And now this 2025 class, you signed Zayden Walker, the number 1 inside linebacker in the country. Troy Bowles could very well be a productive college football player, could be a solid inside linebacker at this level. But this is a tough room to crack. And I think, I don't think any more explanation is needed. Troy Bowles, top 50 recruit coming out. And Sam Pimba, even higher than that. He was a 5-star. And Sam Pimba is one that I would say I'm disappointed with. Sam Pimba, I kind of compared to the Jaw Jarrett transfer. Like, I think there's a reason. Lots of times these guys transfer. Sometimes it's to get more money playing somewhere else. Sometimes it's because they didn't like the way they were used in the offense and the defense, something like that. Sometimes they want more playing time, and sometimes it's just they actually know, like, I can't play here. I think sometimes we overlook that aspect. So we see guys like they're entities, right? Like they're the 37th ranked player in the country coming out of high school. Like those rankings aren't real. Like those don't mean anything. You're on Georgia's roster. CJ Allen was whatever rank coming out of high school. Smile Munden was whatever. Raylan Wilson was whatever they were. Once they're on the roster, you're just a player. You're just a guy. You don't have that ranking following you. So we see a guy like Jamal Jarrett with his big time ranking come out of high school. We see a guy like Sam Pimba, the 5-star ranking come out of high school. And maybe that guy walks into Georgia's room and he says, oh, wow, I'm never going to play at this place. I can't stack up in this depth chart. So that could be all it is. And maybe Sam Pimba is a bust, or maybe he wasn't going to play at Georgia and he goes on somewhere else and is equally and is a very productive player. So that remains to be seen. Yeah, Justin Rett, a second-year guy, safety, just another guy that just wasn't able to really correct the depth chart. So you can't really hate on a guy like that trying to go somewhere and play right away. So those are the guys that Georgia's lost in the portal. So that's the bad news. We started with the bad news. Now let's get to the better news. I guess it's not good news because nothing has necessarily happened with these guys. But those are the transfer portal losses. Now let's talk about the potential additions in the transfer portal. Like that's what the Clemson Tigers didn't understand. Like, yeah, it's cool. I think most people don't want to have to live in the portal and get guys out of the portal. But if your players are going in the portal, then you damn sure need to be getting players out of the portal. And Clemson made history this week, getting their first commit out of the portal. The wide receiver, I want to say, what is it, from Illinois State or something? But yeah, you got to get the portal. The portal giveth and the portal taketh away. And these are some guys that Georgia's trying to get out of the portal. So to start with, Eric Singleton, the Georgia Tech transfer. This guy's the number 1 player in the transfer portal right now, and takes his first visit out of the portal to Georgia. And now it appears Georgia's not playing the same game as Eric Singleton, and they appear to be out of the sweepstakes for him. You're seeing a lot of Ole Miss talk, some Texas talk with Eric Singleton. I think he said something about wanting $1 million a year, I think. So, not that we're going to cry for Georgia Tech on this podcast, but man, You lose Eric Singleton in this class. You lose Jared Ivey a couple classes ago. You lose excuse me, you lose Jahmyr Gibbs in the portal. The portal has just been really rough on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. But I think that's kind of what it is when you're one of those programs that you are a Power 5 school, a Power 4 school, but you're not one of the elites, then your roster is going to get poached. I mean, you've seen South Carolina. Like South Carolina, someone who's been a lot better than Georgia Tech, and their roster's been poached all over the place. So, bummer for Georgia Tech, but somebody's going to be getting a dynamic receiver in Eric Singleton. And speaking of dynamic receivers, I think that's where Georgia is going to be the most active in the portal. You've seen them already. I mean, I don't have to tell you anything about the future. You can just look at the past and know how active Georgia's going to be in the portal. You brought in Colby Young and London Humphreys in last year's portal. Then the year before that, you bring in Dom Lovett and Ra Thomas. And you brought in Michael Jackson, also from USC last year. That's 5 transfers Georgia's brought in at the receiver position in the last 2 years alone. You also brought in Lawrence Cager a few years ago. Like Georgia's high school recruiting at the wide receiver position has not been, necessarily what they want it to be. And, I think it's been out of necessity that they've hit the portal, but they've gotten some solid impact players out of the portal. Like Trevor Etienne this year has been maybe Georgia's best offensive weapon. So I think clearly been Georgia's best offensive weapon. So, this could be a potential impact player at this position. Dane Key is the one a lot of people are talking about from the transfer from Kentucky. Kentucky's top transfer or top receiver already, or top 2 receivers already have hit the portal. So Barian Brown has committed to LSU, and now you have Dane Key potentially committing to Georgia, or he's at least visiting Georgia as of Instagram, as of earlier today. So, this guy had a low-key, pretty productive season this year at Kentucky, which didn't have many bright spots, especially at the quarterback position. And this guy had 715 yards, averaged 15 yards a catch, a couple touchdowns on the season, had 108 catches for 105 yards in their win over Ole Miss. He also had 8 for 83 and a touchdown in their close loss to Vanderbilt. Didn't do much, 3 catches for 23 yards when they played Georgia and almost beat Georgia early in the season. But I mean, this guy is a big body, 6'3", 210, and averaging 15 yards a catch. Like I said, I think if Georgia's able to get him, I think that'd be a nice addition to this receiver room. And then the other one that hit the portal earlier today out of USC, the combo out of USC, Zachariah Branch and Zion Branch. So Zachariah Branch was a 5-star. I mean, I thought this guy was going to be the next Percy Harvin, watching him as a freshman. And if you know anything about me and Percy Harvin, I think Percy Harvin's like one of the most underrated college football players of all time. I think he didn't get nearly enough credit on those great Florida teams, and definitely didn't get any in that documentary that they did, Swamp Kings, on Netflix. Like Percy Harvin was just an absolute just human joystick. We like to call Isaiah McKenzie the human joystick around these parts in Athens, but Percy Harvin, that dude was just different. Zachariah Branch is a true freshman. This guy is like the number 1 athlete, number 1 receiver in the country coming out of high school. 31 catches for 320 yards and 2 touchdowns as a freshman. But he also had 332 punt return yards and took a punt to the house. Also had 442 kick return yards and took a kick to the house. Like, this dude looked like he was going to be a superstar. And then this year, 47 catches for 503 yards. Like, yeah, that's fine. But 10.7 yards a catch, just 1 touchdown. A little worried about that. I mean, USC, their team, wasn't the best situation in USC this year. But this guy's got a lot of ability. He hasn't necessarily put it together yet. I'm shocked a guy like him is on the average 10 yards a carry, or 10 yards a catch, I should say, in his 2 years in college. But I think there's a lot there. And then you couple him with his brother Zion Branch, the 4-star safety a couple years ago. I mean, this guy was a top 50 recruit coming out of high school in his own right. Like, so this guy was also big time. So I know that Georgia is definitely interested in adding something in the portal at the wide receiver position, but you're also losing Dan Jackson. You're also losing Malachi Starks in the secondary. These two guys have said they want to go to the same school, and they were both at USC before. Maybe if they're transferring as a package deal, maybe Georgia is in play. And I've as far as I've heard, Georgia is one of those short list schools that's being talked about when it comes to Zachariah Branch. Who are the other schools I think that have been rumored with Branch? I think it's oh man, I don't have it pulled up in front of me, but the usual suspects. I think Miami is in there. I want to say is Alabama, probably Ole Miss. You get it. Don't quote me on that because I'm not looking at exactly who's interested in Zachariah Branch right now, but he's definitely going to be a hot commodity in the transfer portal. And then the other one, Justin Young here in the chat. Appreciate you chiming in. Appreciate you tuning in live here at the Georgia Voice of College Football. Justin Young said he wants that young man from UCLA, and Justin is referring to J. Michael Sturdivant, and that is not Michael, not like JaMychal Green that went to Alabama a few years back, the basketball player. This is just J. Michael, just the letter J. Michael, and this dude is a similar build to Dane Key. I think he's similar template receiver, 6'3", 205. This guy, junior. This past year, just 22 catches for 315 yards and 2 touchdowns on the season. Only played in seven games this year, so he had 5 for 117 in their loss to USC. Had 7 for 107 in their loss to Minnesota. Had a 40-yard catch in both of those games. Yeah, I really like J. Michael Sturdivant's look. I think he's the kind of guy that Georgia wants to get out of the portal. I think that's kind of what this team is missing. I mean, you saw what they got out of the portal last year. Colby Young, a big body receiver that can make some of those contested catches. And that's what they tried to add to this team, right? And unfortunately, Colby Young had his off the field issues, and he's been away from the team for the second half of the season. But that's definitely one thing that Georgia's team has been missing. You need those big body guys that can make the contested catches. That's what was so great about this receiving corps in 2023. You had Vlad McConkey, the shifty guy, the big play threat. You also had Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint that could make a lot of tough contested catches. Also, just a hell of a blocker. People always sleep on those kind of guys. Georgia seems to always have just really solid receivers like that do the dirty work. And Marcus Rosemy-Jack Saint exemplifies that as much as anybody. Oh yeah, and you also had Brock Bowers, who's like the best player that's played at Georgia in maybe a decade. Like, that dude is just a superstar. Not going to get into my fantasy team and how I only needed 5 points on Monday Night Football to win, and Bowers was only able to give me 4.5, and I lose my matchup by a half a point. I'm not going to get into that, though. I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to blame Desmond Ridder or anything. It's definitely not Bowers' fault. I'm definitely not going to blame all of my fantasy football losses on Desmond Ridder, but I feel like he definitely played a role. But yeah, so that Georgia 2023 receiving corps was just so deep and talented, but it was more importantly, it was just diversified. They had different types of weapons. And this year you're really just, all Georgia's guys are just the kind of little small receivers that need to get, they're all like supposed to be guys that get yards after the catch, and none of them like really do. Like Arian Smith is an elite track guy. He's obviously had his problems with drops, and but he's just not necessarily that guy you give the ball to, behind the line of scrimmage and have him make plays after the catch. I would love one thing, just one side note, and I'm not here to disrespect Arian Smith, but if we could just replace Mecole Hardman, like just trade Arian Smith and Mecole Hardman's careers, I would be down for that in a moment. Like, they're both those elite like 10-second track guys, like, and Mecole Hardman he's got some of that edge that I think this receiver room is missing this year. But Arian Smith, for all his faults, the guy knows how to recover a damn fumble. I'll tell you that right now. The Kentucky game, the Texas game, he's had some clutch fumble recoveries this season. But I took a turn there. But going back to J. Michael Sturdivant, I think that's the kind of guy Georgia wants to get. And I think based on what Georgia did last year in the portal, getting London Humphreys when they did, getting Colby Young when they did. Like, and granted, those guys were highly ranked portal recruits, whatever you want to call them, in the rankings coming out of the portal. I think what you're seeing more than anything is Georgia's not getting into bidding wars for guys. Georgia, like, I think they targeted those guys early, and they were like, "Oh, yeah, we'll come help the room." And they're like, "All right, let's do it." And they're not gonna wait till the portal closes, till like the price starts to get driven up. It seems like a kind of like MLB teams in the MLB draft, like signability is a very important thing. Like you don't have to get into bidding wars to get some of these guys. And I think a lot of times Georgia's kind of expecting maybe a discount because they have been one of the more consistent programs and are probably the most consistent program in college football. And you're seeing on top of things like people should also I know the receiver recruiting hasn't been what it is, but it's also like it's just false narratives. I think half the time that this Georgia team is somehow this like old school offense. Like this is now the third year in a row that Georgia has been a, I would say, more dangerous passing team. They led the conference in passing yards each of the last 2 years. And what Beck is right near the top again this year. I think we're second or third in passing yards this year. So Georgia's been a passing offense. Their tight end was their best player, and maybe that was throwing off receivers that, oh, I don't want to go to a place that gives the tight end the ball so much. It's like, well, if your tight end is this good, then yeah, you're going to feed him. Brock Bowers is the best player on the team, and so they fed him the rock. And I think that's really what receivers should be looking at is Georgia will get their best player the ball, and that's something they haven't always done. Georgia does like to spread it around, of course, but when Bowers was at his best, he was putting up big numbers. And I think you're seeing a lot of guys that have come in the portal for Georgia. They've definitely made an impact. So outside of the receiver position, I think there's been talk that Georgia wants to improve on the defensive line. I think Kirby has an interesting strategy in the portal because I think a lot of guys like I think a lot of fans, I should say, like use the portal to kind of read between the lines because it's like, oh, this guy left, maybe try to throw in reasons of why it happened or why Georgia's taking a guy at a certain position. I think at times it's like, oh, they're taking a guy at this position. They must not like the guys we have at that. They took Xavier McLeod in this last class, and the defensive line, hasn't been elite or anything this year, but it's been very good. And I think you've seen that Kirby's not afraid to go to the portal to get a guy who's like third, fourth string just to build depth because that just that depth makes you that much better. And I think that's why Clemson has been so foolish for taking the portal approach that they have, because to be able to build depth with Division I, Power 4 football players, like that's invaluable. Like that's a lot more. You're going to get a lot more of those guys in 1 year than you're going to get out of a potential freshman. So, and then obviously the freshman could just hit the portal the following year. So it's a real tightrope walk that coaches are having to do. And I think Kirby Smart probably does it better than anybody. Like it's like MLB, Major League Baseball team, touting their farm system. It's like, okay, farm system's cool. It's cool to have a good farm system. The future looks bright, but I want to win some games now. We want to win now. And so it's that balance of having the roster built for this year and also having those recruits that are willing to sit for a year, 2 years and develop and get into the and to start to get onto the field. So you're seeing that balance have to be done all around college football. And I think Kirby Smart's as good as anybody. So that's my take. That's my latest on Georgia's transfer portal, update, if you will. So like I said, please share, like, and subscribe to the channel. It always helps us out when you do that. But the last thing I'll hit on before we leave the show today, we got to talk college football playoff. Georgia's not sitting here and not playing in the first round, so they don't have to worry so much. Like I said, 15 days till Georgia plays in the quarterfinals of the college football playoff. So right now, I think most Georgia fans are focusing on that Friday night game.